not gonna die for them.
Survival horror seems simple enough. Just throw a group of people into a dangerous situation and watch them as they try to escape. Oftentimes though, the environment draws more interest than the characters trapped inside of it, and as the threat becomes more and more clear, the murderous werewolves, or the sadistic tormentor, or the ravenous cave dwellers that make this place more than a nuisance, but something to survive, the story's protagonists can become secondary, their emotional journey forgotten among the more ostentatious elements of the film, assuming it even bothered to explore its characters in the first place. The legacies of these sorts of films tend to lie in their situations far more than in their characters, and with such extreme stakes, trapped in a cabin surrounded by werewolves, or in a house flooded with booby traps, or in a cave with murderous creatures, it makes sense. But what if these situations did more than force their characters to simply survive, but to change as well? What happens when these otherworldly scenarios become a catalyst, when they push characters to their breaking point and force them to reveal the version of themselves that even they didn't know existed, that only manifests when their survival begins to feel hopeless? The year 2000 saw the release of Pitch Black, the beginning of a science fiction franchise centered around this man, a killer named Riddick. But while each successive film almost exclusively follows his perspective, the first installment of this series sees his status as the lead challenged by another character, one whose traits actively juxtapose his, illuminating not only the differences between these two characters, but their unexpected similarities as well, a parallel that dictates the progression of the film's story through the development of their characters. You see, the film doesn't hide Riddick's moral ambiguity, revealing it early on with his opening narration as he compares his brain to that of an animal.
The animal side.
So when he takes various selfish and inhumane actions, leaving people to die or outright killing them himself, it doesn't surprise us. We wouldn't, however, expect the same from a pilot responsible for the lives of a dozen travelers, yet that very thing happens when we meet the other half of the film's dual protagonists, one not so different from Riddick himself. Docking pilot Carolyn Fry. Pitch Black is not a complicated film. After crash landing on a mysterious planet, a group of passengers become prey to a ravenous alien species. But underneath that simplicity lies something that most people overlook, that at first seems like a mere plot point, but as the story unfolds, becomes the heart of the film, an obvious change, a character growing, learning from past mistakes, and becoming better, an arc. You see, the film begins with a spaceship recklessly plummeting towards an unknown world, and as inexperienced pilot Carolyn Fry struggles to gain control, she considers pulling a lever that would purge and ultimately kill the passengers currently in cryosleep so she can stabilize the ship and save herself. However, just when it seems she chooses the noble decision to instead risk her own safety and save the passengers, the ship experiences even more turbulence, and Fry, fearing for her life, acts on her selfishness and pulls the lever.
I'm not gonna die for them.
Only for this declaration of her character to fail when the mechanism doesn't work. She doesn't stop herself, her environment does, not only establishing Fry's moral muddiness, but also forcing her to later confront this aspect of her character when she interacts with the very passengers she tried to kill.
Actually, the only reason we're alive is because of her.
Yes, I suppose you're right. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
No, really, thanks awfully.
Well done.
So, from its opening moments, the film paints Fry as selfish, willing to sacrifice others for her own preservation. She doesn't consider herself a leader, responsible for other people, actively denying the title of captain.
I'm not your captain.
As the film continues, however, as the surviving passengers look to her when all other sources of authority die, she develops a much stronger sense of responsibility for the lives she had been assigned to transport. Instead of treating them as faceless entities aboard some expendable compartment on a spaceship, Fry begins to see them, to protect them, to lead them across this perilous planet. But throughout this change, her past decision continues to haunt her, with one man defined as little more than a killer magnifying that lingering guilt. Riddick challenges Fry, observing her progression throughout the story and curiously testing the strength of that development, whether she merely says she's changed or if she'll truly take the actions that such a change requires. As he pushes her to be more like him, selfish, interested in his own desires before anyone else's, she resists, struggling against the ideology she not only understands, but also feels within herself.
No one's gonna blame you. Save yourself, Carolyn.
Both Fry and Riddick influence the other, forcibly exposing a part that they refuse to acknowledge within themselves. While Riddick reminds Fry of her desire to survive even at the expense of others, Fry points out the humanity that Riddick tries to hide beneath his tough exterior, that despite all of his posturing, deep down, he does care for other people.
There's gotta be some part of you that wants to rejoin the human race.
Before that though, as the film approaches its climax, Riddick leaves the group and goes off on his own, forcing Fry to help the others herself. So she gathers the group's last bit of protection from the monsters and ventures alone through the depths of danger as the others hide and wait for her to return with more resources. Luckily, Fry manages to evade death long enough to reach a small safe haven, where she discovers Riddick preparing to launch the last functional spaceship and leave everyone else to die. Curiously, Riddick stops and offers to let Fry escape the planet with him, as long as she abandons the others who were still hiding from the monsters terrorizing the surrounding area. But after nearly falling prey to her own cowardice once again, walking up the ship with Riddick, Fry declines his offer and instead solidifies her newfound beliefs through both her words and her actions, telling Riddick that she would die for the remaining passengers, a complete turnaround from her initial perspective.
I would die for them.
This growth even forces emotion out of the normally stoic Richard B. Riddick, resulting in his own change, deciding to join Fry as she abandons the safety she finally reached and plunges back into danger to save the people she left behind. Instead of simply saving herself like she would have at the beginning of the film, Fry goes back, risking her life for the same passengers she originally tried to kill, no longer treating others as a sacrifice, but becoming one herself, reminding us how much she's changed as she claims responsibility as a leader, finally taking the title of Captain.
I am the captain of this ship!
Carolyn's arc may not be super complex, but it doesn't need to be. When so many similar films deny their characters the opportunity to grow, it's nice to see one that doesn't. Much like those films, Pitch Black may still focus more on other aspects of its world, parts that develop even further in its sequels. But Carolyn is the heart of this story, the representative of its theme, the character who personifies not only the darkest parts of humanity, but also the potential to grow beyond them. The brightest parts as well. Thanks for watching.